Greetings, this is Dr. Scott Monk, and I want to talk to you about a technology called Acugraph. Acugraph provides a real-time evaluation of your body's electrical conductance or flow through 12 recognized pathways you've probably heard of called meridians. So just as we send chemicals throughout the body via its organs, electrons are also constantly moving throughout the body via various conductive tissues from one organ to the next. So an illustration would be if you thought of each organ as a city, the meridians would be the electrical highways that travel between those organs or cities, and the electrons would be the cars driving along that highway. So measurements at certain electrical points along these pathways reveals whether the electrical flow of the body is as it should be. The Acugraph exam itself is done when the practitioner uses a probe to measure specific acupuncture points. You can see the lady on the left using the probe on the gentleman's right hand. He in turn is holding a ground bar in his left hand, so that makes the circuit, the electricity going in and through the probe gets measured. The probe looks like this, and the probe along with the computer generates a nice graph. And here's an example of one of those graphs. We see greens. Greens are good, of course. Reds are too hot or too high. Blues are too low. And purples mean there's too much difference between organs on the left side, or the same organ on the left side and the right side of the body. So in this case, ST under the purple stands for stomach. There was not enough or as much energy, electrical energy, on the left side when the stomach point was measured as there was on the right side. So that shows up as a split. The Acugraph generates a personal integrated energetic score, or PI score, which looks like this graphically. This particular patient had a 62 for their PI score, which isn't a bad score. You see on the left side that it fits into the typical range. I've seen patients with as high as 90. I've never seen a 100. And I see lots of patients with 30s and 40s because I treat a lot of chronically ill folks who've had problems for a long time that haven't been able to be helped. And so their energetic score will reflect the level of illness that they have, and it'll be much lower. Here's another graph that the Acugraph generates for us. You can see the gentleman in the middle there. There's a red X off to his right side, upper right side. And that is telling us that most of the energy in his body is up and to the right. We'd like the red X to be centered on the crosshairs. Your body is really good at balancing top to bottom, left to right. And the times when it struggles is the time when there's something going on that needs to be addressed. So in this particular case, up and right energy may mean that there's a gallbladder issue or a liver issue, since those are both up and on the right. So those are things we look at, we take into account. On the left side of this chart, you see something called the chi energy. And this particular patient had a chi energy level of 84. Chi energy is what I call your energy at the moment. It's what you have at any given time of the day, how you're feeling at this time. So if you didn't sleep well last night, you could expect your chi energy level to be lower. If you did get a good night's sleep and you're generally a healthy person, you should expect it to be much higher. On the right side, we have a stability score. So this particular patient scored a 71%. Your stability score will be higher depending on the number of greens you had on your Acugraph chart. If you had lots of reds and blues and purples, that's instability, and so that percentage will be lower on that particular measurement. The Acugraph also compares all your old tests, so you get a nice depiction of how you've progressed over time. How long does the test take? Well, the entire test takes less than 3 minutes to run. But when you factor in the treatment time, you'll plan on spending about anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes per session in the office itself. How do we do the treatments? Well, I like to use traditional acupuncture needles on the treatments, but not always and not for all people. When we do use the needles, we can also stimulate them electrically. I do that quite often. and or with the laser. I also do that quite often. The laser treatment on top of an acupuncture treatment is something I'm doing more and more with. We're seeing some pretty profound results with that. Non-acupuncturally, you can use just electrical or laser itself on the particular points, and that's also extremely effective. So how effective is it? Well, on its own, we know about acupuncture. The treatments to correct electrical imbalances have been around for thousands of years, correcting a host of conditions and receiving the highest praises from its users. So on its own, acupuncture is a powerful healing method. However, acupuncture treats only the electrical side of the body. And treating one aspect of the body is good, but treating many or all aspects of the body at the same time often produces greater results in much less time. So in our office, we do not rely on electrical treatments alone. We also use advanced nutritional therapies like functional bioanalysis and dietary programs to balance the body's inner chemistry. We also do things structurally to address issues with joints, muscles, and posture. Additionally, all the treatments that we do in the office are enhanced with laser, electrical, and or vibrational therapies on each visit. So we try to do as much as we can for each person who comes in, because you're not just electrical and you're not just structural and you're not just chemical, you're all of those things. And if we can address all of those at the same time, we see the greatest responses. So who's this treatment good for? Well, if you're enhancing someone's electrical potential in their body and you're making things flow properly, it's potentially helpful on some level for all conditions. However, the ones that come in my office the most are people who are complaining of things like allergies, who've had chemical sensitivities, digestive issues is a very common one, pain of all sorts, fatigue of all sorts, headaches, hormonal imbalances, inflammatory issues is a big one. And then chronic infections, things like Lyme disease, anything that has caused somebody to be debilitated for any period of time. They will have low energy, as I will show you in just a moment with a patient. So a patient came in the office recently, and her chief complaint was insomnia. She would sleep for 30 minutes at a time, followed by 1 hour of being awake. And she was suffering from hives, and this pattern would happen over and over. She'd be up for an hour and then back to sleep for 30 minutes, up for an hour, back to sleep for 30 minutes, for 30 years. At times, the hives were so bad that she would actually lay down in the snow to try to stop the burning. Also, in the last few years, she has contracted rheumatoid arthritis and diabetes. Now, this is not surprising, because when your body is working so hard for so long to try to manage some sort of condition, your resources dry up and all of a sudden more problems start happening. Take a look at her very first Acugraph we did back in August. As you can see, she has lots of greens, but the reason why she has lots of greens is because she has no energy. Her average score on the left-hand side of the graph is a 12. So she wasn't going to have any reds to indicate hot because she didn't have any energy to be hot. And she wasn't going to have many blues because the graph, frankly, doesn't go much lower than 6, 7, or 8 is one of the lowest scores you'll get with a reading with the Acugraph. So she had very low energy, extremely low energy, and that was very much indicative of the condition she was suffering with. It was draining her. It was taking all the resources she had, and the Acugraph represented that perfectly. 1 week later, you can see there was a slight rise in her energy. Even her TE there in the middle, the red one, that's triple energizer, that's your thyroid and your adrenals. It's starting to sprout up faster than the other ones. I think of these bars coming up out of the ground like grass comes up out of the ground in spring after winter dormancy. And the adrenals are often the first ones to pop up because they give you some immediate energy. Adrenaline is an immediate energy hormone, and so no surprise triple energizer started shooting up for her. But look in the middle of the screen, it says she slept through the night, and that was unheard of for her. So even with this slight change in her energy from the Acugraph, we got a profound symptomatic change, and that alone was enough to make her a believer in what we were doing. A week later, we see even more energy coming up. Different systems are coming up. The triple energizer actually went down to blue. Lungs, next to it, large intestine, and on the left of it, small intestine, also starting to come up. Not evenly, you see, and that's okay. When you're starting from zero, it doesn't always come up evenly. But as long as things are moving in the right direction, the trend line is the way we want it. Again, in the middle of the screen, hives were gone for 3 days straight. Now we're starting to have some miracles. We're starting to sleep, and we're starting to see these horrible 30-year hives get under control to some extent. And it's only been a few weeks so far. I think only 2 so far. A month later, we are looking at a graph that looks much more normal, that a healthy average person walking in the office might have a graph like this. And so this dear lady is starting to get her life back. You see lots of greens. You see red on the heart bar code there. And in the middle, it says, still sleeping well. Hives are fewer and do not last as long, not as raised, not as painful, decreased by 80% overall. I'll tell you, I've seen her one other time since I did this last graph, and I know she told me that her insulin levels are down by 50%. She's been able to decrease her insulin by 50%. And that's just spectacular. And this was doing all of our treatments at the same time, the nutritional, the Acugraph, the structural, and seeing terrific results. And the Acugraph being this wonderful tool that can show us how our body is responding and correcting itself with the right care. So in conclusion, I just want you to know about this technology. I want you to know it's available to you. I'm thrilled with it. It goes beautifully with the nutritional work that I do. If you have any more questions, please contact our office. You can find us at www.drscottmonk.com.